Welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy emotional stories like this one. A villainous father who doesn't care and a dead mother shaped his solitary and obsessive personality. He became irrationally fixated on the female protagonist who once healed him. He resorted to all means to forcefully take what he wanted, but ultimately met an unhappy end. The system tasked me with his redemption, and so I was reborn. Looking at my son, still lively and kicking in the alley, dressed in a leather jacket and sporting an outrageous hair color, I weighed the kitchen knife in my hand and smeared redemption. That's just a mother disciplining her son, as natural as can be. When the system allowed me to be reborn, Sebastian was cornering a frail boy in an alley clad in black leather, his hair dyed deep crimson. Leaning against the wall, he toyed with a knife in his hand, his tone cold. Tell the truth, or should I waste one of your hands? Choose a quintessential bad boy with a 360 degrees no blind spot attitude. The boy, surrounded by a group of lackeys, trembled in fear. However, the next second the bad boy tried to enhance his aura by stepping onto a trash can lid with one foot. He miscalculated the height of the trash can and ended up painfully straddling at his face, contorting fiercely. From a distance, I watched inside deeply. Finally, with the system unable to stop me, I went to the convenience store next door and bought a kitchen knife too. I should have been dead after the birth of Sebastian. My health deteriorated, but the hospital couldn't diagnose any illness. I died when Sebastian was 3 years old, yet I was reborn as a 16-year-old girl. The system told me that my death was inevitable. It was to fit the villain trope of a motherless and neglected child, which led to his solitary and obsessive nature. This lack of love was why Sebastian clung desperately to any small kindness from the female protagonist, like a drowning man grasping at a lifeline. But I had to come back, because the future Sebastian would turn too dark, even killing the male and female protagonists. You need to redeem him and prevent what happens next. This was the system's bargain for my rebirth. But redemption. I looked down at the brand new kitchen knife. The chilling blade reflected a young and familiar face I smeared. That's called a mother disciplining her son, as natural as can be. Sebastian thought no one saw his embarrassing moment, so he stiffly maintained his posture for a while before pretending to kick someone in annoyance and lowered his foot. Don't give me that crap. Tell the truth, or you won't have hands to spare today, he said with force. It would have been impressive if not for his hand rubbing his butt behind his back. When I approached with the knife, this was the scene I witnessed. The system thought I was furiously going to set things straight and kept urging me along the way, but I just stood behind Sebastian and patted his shoulder with a smile. A toy knife won't break anyone's legs. Need a better tool like trying this kitchen knife. The cold blade pressed against Sebastian's cheek. The bad boy instantly stiffened, slowly lowering his hand from his, but then overwhelmed with embarrassment. Damn foolishness has its own consistency, so Sebastian's motion to alleviate his pain became increasingly unrestrained. He even patted his bottom a few times, feeling self-satisfied all under my watchful eye. I sighed, thinking to myself, how did this foolishly naive guy turn dark enough to kill the protagonists? Could it be that his sheer stupidity amused them to death? System, please respect this world's villain who hasn't turned dark yet and is still full of innocence. I just grunted. Then I looked down at Sebastian's pants, split to reveal a hint of pink underneath, and couldn't help but click my tongue. Innocence. The system stayed silent. Clearly my appearance disrupted Sebastian's plans. Amidst the panic-stricken cries of Big Brother, thinking Sebastian was about to be attacked, he calmly turned around, looking down from above, trying to mask his earlier embarrassment with disdain. Who are you? Didn't you see I got here first? I was about to speak just as I was about to remind him that his pants were split. An angry female voice rang out to Sebastian, you're bullying another student again. This was the moment Sebastian and the female protagonist first met in the original story. It was just a brief mention. Vivian's shout stopped Sebastian's bullying and successfully caught his attention, but in reality Sebastian faced much more. A girl with glasses rushed over and began scolding Sebastian. Sebastian rolled his eyes, finally interrupting Victoria. Do you really think being a class monitor gives you the right to discipline me? My dad doesn't even care about me. What right do you have? Victoria's face turned ashen. I couldn't help but furrow my brow at what I heard. Just as I was about to speak, I sensed something and spun around, delivering a fierce kick to a boy who had stealthily approached me when no one was paying attention. The boy let out a piercing scream. Damn, that's vicious, huh? Sebastian was startled, but quickly realized what was going on. You never changed, you, he said, fuming with rage. He rolled up his sleeves, clenched his fists, and smashed them into the boy's face. If I don't beat you to death today, I won't carry the Harrison family name. His movements were swift and decisive, however the stain on his pants grew larger. Silence fell all around except for Victoria, feeling humiliated by Sebastian and unusually angry, her voice sharp. Sebastian, I'm going to tell the teacher with your behavior. No wonder the Harrison family doesn't want you. Sebastian's self-assured posture stiffened instantly, his face darkened, and he glared at Victoria with a menacing look. Say that again. What did I say wrong? Victoria shrugged off. Vivian, who was trying to hold her back, lifted her chin defiantly. When Mr. Harrison and teacher Elena get married, let's see how long you can keep being arrogant. Sebastian clenched his fists at his sides. He stared intently at Victoria, taking a step forward unconsciously. He can stay arrogant for quite a while, considering the Harrison family has been blinded more than once. I tiptoed and patted Sebastian on the head, coaxing, be good, stand behind me. Sebastian suddenly relaxed. He turned to look at me. You're all the same. Victoria looked at me, rolling her eyes with disgust. Rich second-generation brats, really just a bunch of bullies preying on the weak. Let's see what your so-called weak have done, I said, too tired to argue further. I leaned down and pulled a cell phone from the boy's pocket. The phone's photo album was locked with a password. I threatened the boy with a kitchen knife to get the password, flipped through a few photos, and handed the phone over. Victoria held her head high, refusing to look. Instead, Vivian took it, and her face turned pale. Quickly, scum, she hissed. But she wasn't addressing Sebastian. She was talking to the boy, now curled up on the ground. The photo album was filled with secret photos of girls with Vivian's testimony. Victoria quickly realized her mistake, but she didn't apologize, still stubborn. Although what he did was wrong, beating him up like this is even worse. Besides, these photos don't show faces. Who knows who they are? Maybe he was just looking at them in private. You should apologize first for hitting him. Even Vivian quietly distanced herself a bit more from Victoria. Sebastian commented, idiot. You're right. The anger I had been suppressing finally exploded. The system said this was because it needed to fit the antagonist's persona in this world, so except for the female lead, everyone was irrationally hostile towards Sebastian. Laughing in anger, I said, if you think his actions weren't that bad, then I'll take some private photos of you right now. They won't show your face, and I'll just look at them myself. What are you doing? As I walked towards her, Victoria screamed. She warned me this is illegal. I'm calling the police. I ignored her and continued until Victoria broke down crying. Expressionless, I said, since you know voyeurism is illegal, why are you so sure Sebastian did wrong? He's just a thug. A thug, I laughed. A thug who stops evil deeds and protects young girls. You think he's a thug, but for those girls who were photographed, he's a hero. Sebastian rarely heard someone call him a hero. He was stunned at first, then looked up proudly, even agreed to surpass the so-called class president in the final exams next year when I suggested it. Victoria ran away crying. Vivian watched her run off, but didn't immediately follow. Instead, she sincerely apologized to Sebastian. I'm sorry, I misunderstood you too. This improved my opinion of the female lead quite a bit. Turning around, I saw Sebastian, still grinning foolishly. I couldn't help it. I reached out and delivered a solid smack to his beautifully shaped head. Can't you speak up for yourself? Sebastian held his head and yelped. Wait. He belatedly realized something was amiss and, puzzled, asked, wait, who are you? So I weighed the kitchen knife in my hand, smiling brightly. Word for word, I'm your mother. Sebastian was convinced that I was provoking him, even though I could clearly state the birthmarks on Sebastian's body, but as Sebastian blushed and tried to stop me, he still didn't believe it, so I asked him to call Alexander, but he couldn't get through even once. I watched as the smile at the corner of Sebastian's lips gradually faded. After a long silence, I asked him, has it always been like this? What if Alexander not answering your calls? Sebastian paused for a moment, but he quickly turned his head away and casually kicked a Ken by his feet, scoffing coldly. I'm not dead, yet there's no need for him to bother. You're quite capable managing to dig up even my information. He suddenly stopped speaking mid-sentence. Sebastian stared blankly at his phone, then cursed under his breath. I instinctively raised my hand, no swearing. He didn't stop his feet as usual, but gripped his phone, his eyes reddening. I glanced over. It was a photo. In the photo, Alexander was helping a young and pretty woman, who also showed a shy expression, probably because of the angle of the shot. The two seemed very intimate. Hey, you, Sebastian called me, his face grim. He sneered. Since you claim to be my mom, I might as well take you to catch the cheaters. His tone carried a barely detectable harshness. I quietly watched Sebastian and suddenly asked, "Are you angry? Why?" The information provided by the system indicated that the relationship between Sebastian and his father Alexander was not good, and Sebastian had already declared that he would not take over the Harrison family and would sever ties with Alexander once he was of age. So why was he angry about Alexander seeing another woman? Sebastian pursed his lips and didn't speak, but his eyes grew even redder. Finally, it was his subordinate who quietly reminded me, "Today is Big Brother's mother's death anniversary." I was taken aback for a moment. I couldn't quite grasp what Sebastian's attitude towards me, his long-dead real mother, really was. Sebastian went to the school to catch the cheaters. The female lead in the photo was his homeroom teacher. She was also the Ms. Elena mentioned by Victoria. Elena was also the door to the office was kicked open forcefully. Sebastian, hands in his pockets, spoke nonchalantly. Sorry to interrupt your unmediated intimacy, but old man, if you wanted Ms. Elena as your second spring, why didn't you say so earlier? Today is my mom's death anniversary. I was just going to talk to her too. Let her also meet this new sister." His tone was provocative and carried an unnoticeable anger. I couldn't help but think that Alexander not killing him over such remarks was somewhat paternal. Mr. Harrison, Elena reacted, but I caught a quick flash of impatience and annoyance on her face. Her tone was helpless. "Don't misunderstand. I was just discussing your matters with Mr. Harrison." "Was it really about my matters, or about you two planning to marry?" Elena's voice was cold, emotionless, but it was as if someone suddenly choked Sebastian, and he abruptly stopped talking. The man who had been facing away from us turned around calmly, looking at Sebastian, apologized. Sebastian's lips were tightly pressed. He didn't speak, just his eyes reddening as he stared fixedly at Alexander. Though they were father and son, they looked more like mortal enemies. "It's nothing," Elena quickly spoke up to ease the tension, smiling at Alexander. "He just misunderstood, that's all." "Apologize." Alexander approached Sebastian, his gaze lowered, his tone was calm. "The Harrison family does not raise ill-mannered children." I could clearly feel Sebastian's body stiffen instantly, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. Thinking to myself, this kid verbally claims he doesn't need Alexander, but clearly he cares deeply about what Alexander says. So I sigh, although it's probably a problem with the Harrison family genes, but Mr. Harrison, isn't it a bit too much, always being so cold like this? Alexander paused, as if suddenly frozen. This outburst also reminded Sebastian that I was still beside him. He turned his head, using a stern look as leverage, then pulled me back by the arm, muttering in a low voice, "Picking a fight with him at this time, even I can't save you." "Sebastian, who is she?" It was then that Alexander noticed me, previously obscured by Sebastian. The normally aloof and proud man unexpectedly showed a moment of disarray. He grabbed Sebastian's arm, staring at me unblinkingly, his voice slightly trembling. He repeated, "Who is she?" Sebastian was taken aback. "She's sorry to have tainted your noble Harrison family bloodline." Overwhelmed with guilt, I might as well have climbed straight out of my coffin to apologize to President Harrison in person, right? I looked up at Alexander with a challenging smile, then turning to pat Sebastian on the head. "They say with a stepmom comes a stepdad. Come on, apologize to your stepdad." Sebastian inherited my knack for aggravation, but he's nowhere near my level yet. He still has much to learn. Sebastian glanced at Alexander, then turned back to look at me. Finally, he scoffed. "Has this turned into a real-life soap opera?" My marriage to Alexander was a business arrangement. I had assumed it was a powerful alliance. Only later did I realize it was my parents securing a guardian for me. Alexander is a man of his word. After the passing of my parents, he indeed took his vows seriously, though devoid of romantic love. Nevertheless, it was for this reason I trusted Alexander to take good care of my son. It shouldn't have been like this, at least. "I heard you're getting married to Ms. Elena. Congratulations." The concept of coming back to life was utterly bizarre, hence Alexander, regaining his composure, made a great effort to maintain his calm as he led me and Sebastian away. A partition raised, I looked sideways at Alexander. He had returned to his usual cold demeanor, as if his earlier lapse was merely my imagination. His eyelashes quivered, his tone unusually flustered. "Don't listen to his nonsense, I haven't." Alexander paused, seemingly embarrassed to continue. This man was blessed with good looks, seemingly favored by time itself. Looking at Alexander's face, which had barely changed, I smirked. "Actually, it's okay, if you want to marry someone else. Besides you, I never thought about marrying anyone else." Both voices sounded simultaneously, then both paused, surprised by the other's words. I was the first to recover, smiling lightly. You fulfilled your promise to my father, so you don't need to worry about that anymore. Besides, you're still young, busy with your company. Having someone at home to support you is good. Alexander's expression grew colder with my words. Finally unable to hold back, he interrupted. Did you come back just to tell me this? His tone was hurried, tinged with a hint of grievance. So I restrained my smile, my gaze falling on the partition. It seemed like this would allow me to see Sebastian sitting in front of us. Of course not, I spoke softly, pausing. Alexander, you've let my son suffer. The child who first called me mom, the silly boy who when I was sick in bed would insist on sharing my pain, the child who before my death made a pinky promise to meet again. After his mother's death, he endured much hardship, yet he had no one to share his grievances with. My tone was calm yet filled with anger. You promised me you'd take good care of him. I knew Alexander was emotionally reserved. After all, it took 4 years of our marriage to slightly thaw his icy demeanor, but I thought he might change for Sebastian given their close blood relation. It was only then that I belatedly remembered the system's previous predictions about Sebastian's fated end, unsaved, ultimately dying alone. After a long wait, a nameless rage roared within me, not just towards the man in front of me. Alexander stared at me blankly. He seemed to want to explain something, opened his mouth, but couldn't speak. Finally, he could only turn his head away in near disgrace. Sorry, Alexander spoke softly, not trying to justify himself further. Thus my anger turned to helplessness. I reminded, the one you should be apologizing to isn't me. Alexander fell silent. Sebastian still couldn't believe that his own mother had come back to life and even rejuvenated to a 16-year-old girl looking younger than him. At first, he was a bit wary and uncomfortable, but those feelings vanished without a trace after I led him through a day of gaming. I believe you're my real mom now, Sebastian said, his eyes gleaming as he clutched his phone. Who would have thought that this rebellious teenager with his flamboyant hair and followers in tow was actually a complete novice in the game, barely managing to score. Without looking up, I responded, you're better than your dad. Suddenly the character in the game stopped moving. As expected, she was defeated. Sebastian said boastfully, I'm definitely better than that old man, while hesitantly inching closer to me. After a long pause, the implication was clear. After a moment, I added, when he plays, he treats his phone like a prayer bead. What do you mean? Because he never manages to eliminate anyone. Sebastian looked down at the game screen, focusing on the single point he scored, and beamed. Then he's really terrible. Especially after hearing how I dominated the game with my full set of gear and contrasted it with Alexander's poor performance. Sebastian couldn't help but laugh joyously without a hint of guile. Until the person being teased stood behind him holding 2 glasses of milk. It's time for bed. Alexander remembered my habit of drinking milk before bed. He hesitated, then placed one of the glasses of milk in front of Sebastian, coldly saying, drink it. However, since Alexander spoke up, the previously grinning Sebastian restrained his smile and kept his eyes fixed on the phone screen, not even reaching for the milk. Alexander didn't mind until our eyes met. He stiffened, then dryly commented, you managed to eliminate someone impressive. I kept looking at Alexander. He paused, lips pursed, as if slightly hurt. Better than me. Sebastian was still engrossed in his game. I glanced over. Oh, he was unwittingly becoming more aggressive in the game. After Alexander left, Sebastian finally looked up at me. Can glutinous rice drive away the evil from his body? He asked seriously. I thought about it and replied, maybe not enough on its own, maybe try pairing it with black dog's blood. Sebastian was startled, then laughed loudly, but as he laughed his eyes began to redden. He turned his head to me and said, I thought you'd scold me for disrespecting him. Respect is mutual, I replied, patting his head. If you feel you haven't been respected, making some harmless jokes is okay. What is due respect? It's about having your thoughts and beliefs acknowledged. Others might find them foolish, but they won't interfere too much or force you to change. But a lot of this you have to feel for yourself. You have the right to judge whether you're respected. Sebastian was silent for a while, then drank the milk clean. His voice was a bit strained. That old man has never respected me, but he seemed unsure of himself in the end. Alexander didn't apologize to Sebastian that day, but he explained to Sebastian that he had no plans to marry Elena, and he would investigate the rumors. Elena had reached out that day wanting to discuss Sebastian's education, which made Alexander cancel an important meeting. He hadn't planned to tell Sebastian any of this. He didn't see the need. One who does good without seeking recognition, and one who does everything for his son, but says nothing in this respect. The father and son were exactly alike. So I stretched and smiled. Is that so? Then I'll go and scold him for you. Sebastian didn't respond, but his eyes noticeably brightened. He was very eager to see Alexander put in his place. As I went upstairs, I saw Alexander standing at the corner, his face showing disapproval. You're spoiling him. For the usually strict Harrison family, my recent conversation with Sebastian could indeed be seen as coddling. I tilted my head at him, and so? Alexander frowned, so I smiled. Sebastian actually doesn't like drinking milk at all. He paused, his expression one of surprise. That was the first time you poured him milk, wasn't it? He said disrespectful things to you, yet he drank the milk to the last drop. It was his father's first attempt to change, and in his way he was both respecting and trying to accept it. I remembered the pained expression on Sebastian's face as he pinched his nose and drank the milk, a smile flickering in his eyes. Alexander was silent for a long time, so long that I yawned and was about to go to my room to sleep when he suddenly stopped me. That's how my parents taught me. He paused, unusually hesitant, and no one else taught me. I know. I tiptoed, trying to pat Alexander on the head just like I would do with Sebastian, but he was too tall. Hesitantly, I withdrew my hand, only to see Alexander bending down, calmly nodding. Slightly surprised, I then smiled even more brightly. I know it all. That's why I came back to teach you. Perhaps Sebastian was not the only one in need of redemption. Alexander bowed his head, and I couldn't see the expression on his face. I could only feel him gently brushing against my hand. Then he murmured a muffled acknowledgement. Alexander took a week off for Sebastian. By the time the holiday ended, Sebastian realized that having his mother become younger wasn't such a good thing after all, because I became his new deskmate. Sebastian took a deep breath, his voice trembling. Are you going to study with me? You could also think of it as me wanting to relive my bittersweet student days. I curiously observed everything in the school, seeing young boys and girls shyly moving apart after accidentally touching hands. I couldn't help but sigh. Youth is wonderful. However, my excitement and eagerness stopped after the first math class. Sebastian slept through the class. As usual, I didn't wake him, but when he woke up and was about to skip class, as usual, I caught him expressionlessly. Sebastian, he belatedly realized, and his originally fierce expression turned pleading. I just wanted to go to the restroom. You might not understand me. Well, I pulled Sebastian to sit down, speaking softly. I'm quite competitive, always wanting to be the top where I go. So Sebastian stiffened. I shyly smiled, but after all, I've been away from school for too long. I don't remember much. Also, why does your math teacher have an accent? I adamantly denied that I couldn't understand until Sebastian looked conflicted. Our math teacher has top grade pronunciation. I pretended not to hear, just silently passed my notebook to him. Sebastian glanced down and casually mentioned the answer. Then he looked up, incredulously sincere. Maybe you should go back to middle school first. Perhaps finally finding his footing somewhere. Sebastian's tone carried a subtle hint of pride. I remained silent, just quietly stacking up the political science and geography books, then rolled them up. Sebastian saw the freshly minted roll of books. His face instantly paled. He didn't feel he needed these people, so their attitudes were of no concern to him. As I bowed my head to gather the test papers, I discovered a piece of candy hidden beneath them. My smile deepened with the thought, probably because to live is to be needed. I need him, and he enjoys being needed by me. I'm a bit anemic, but I forgot to bring sugar today. Sebastian noticed. Vivian nodded thoughtfully, yet a fleeting shadow of sadness quickly crossed her eyes. Vivian and Sebastian had an argument. It started when Sebastian accidentally broke Vivian's glass music box. Normally good-tempered, Vivian lost her cool for the first time, and Sebastian, always pampered and spoiled by others, so what should have been an apology turned into an impatient, "It's just a broken thing. If you like it, I can buy you 10 or 8 to make up for it." Especially when everyone blamed Sebastian, he grew so angry that he flipped a table. "Mind your own business. Get lost," he barked, his fierce demeanor silencing everyone. I was sick and on leave for a few days, only to return and find out that the two had been giving each other the cold shoulder for days. Sebastian didn't have many friends, and Vivian was barely one of them now. Even she was ignoring him. After seeing Sebastian's temper, the previously subdued fear among the classmates resurfaced. It seemed he was falling back into the isolation he had faced before. But something was different this time. Watching Sebastian poke the back of the front desk, intending to ask about homework, I noticed his sudden freezing. Upon seeing the panic and fear in the other's eyes, it was clear he was beginning to care about how others viewed him. Yet I didn't remind him or ask about his issue with Vivian until Sebastian couldn't hold back anymore. Why aren't you criticizing me? Criticize you for what everyone says I did something wrong. Sebastian was calm as he spoke. Do you think you did something wrong? I countered. Sebastian fell into a long silence. Much later, he finally said, the music box got a corner chipped off. I saw how much Vivian treasured it, always handling it so carefully. She cries easily, and seeing it damaged would surely make her cry. I intended to find an identical one and replace it quietly, but no one expected that Sebastian, when picking up the music box, would be bumped harshly by someone he couldn't hold on, and it happened just as Vivian returned. He spoke these words in a soft, aggrieved tone. I asked him, did you ever explain this to Vivian? Sebastian didn't respond. You're just like your dad, I teased, tapping his forehead. I told you from the first time we met to speak up. A mouth isn't just for eating. Those good intentions kept to oneself often end up hurting both oneself and others more. If you don't speak up, how will others know? By the time misunderstandings arise and you try to explain, the damage is already done. Sebastian, you're not mute, you can speak. Sebastian pursed his lips, quietly staring at the notebook on the table. It was the one Vivian had lent him when she learned he wanted to study hard. I patted Sebastian on the head, bowing. Isn't hard, see, you're doing it right now. Sebastian grunted, finally admitting reluctantly that he would go and explain things to Vivian, but Vivian had taken leave citing a family emergency. Eager to clarify things, Sebastian got her home address from a teacher and went to find her. I didn't accompany him. The system couldn't resist. You know, I will teach him how to speak up, how to respect others, how to find his direction, how to become stronger. I can teach him everything I know. I interrupted the system, smiling, but I can't protect him forever. I can help him avoid danger this time, but what about next time? What if there are dangers neither you nor I can foresee? What I want to change isn't just the outcome. Hope has never been something given by others. Redemption is only momentary. Only self-help can truly save. The system fell silent. Vivian had a fall down the stairs and was left unconscious in the hospital. Her stepfather, Mr. James, accused Sebastian of being responsible. He claimed that on that day Sebastian stormed into his house and without a word dragged Vivian away. Mr. James tried to stop Sebastian but ended up being beaten by him. Mr. James is a middle school teacher, well regarded by parents, and the neighbors always praised him for his good treatment of his stepdaughter Vivian. Sebastian, on the other hand, is known as a troublemaker, one who misbehaves because of his family status. Moreover, the injuries on Mr. James's face were undeniable. When the police arrived, Sebastian was like a young lion ready to fiercely attack Mr. James again, but was restrained. Sebastian was taken to the police station for questioning. Alexander was abroad on a business trip, so it was his lawyer and I who went to pick him up. Upon seeing me, Sebastian's eyes lit up, but he quickly looked away. The police said he refused to say much. He only mentioned that he did not push Vivian. The hospital said the girl's injuries aren't serious, but for some reason she hasn't woken up yet. The parents are open to settling privately. So, miss, what do you think? I turned my head to look at Sebastian. He didn't want to look at me, but I tapped him firmly on the head. Sebastian winced and held his head, his eyes red as if he had just cried. Sebastian, I looked into his eyes, my tone serious. I'll ask you just one question. Did you do this? No louder so. Sebastian gritted his teeth and said I didn't. All right, I nodded, then told the lawyer we won't settle. I believe in him, and that he wouldn't lie to me. Settling would imply guilt, but Sebastian is innocent. He needs to walk out of here with his integrity intact. Sebastian looked up in surprise. He seemed to want to say something, but tears fell heavily instead. He raised his hand to wipe them, but the more he wiped, the more they flowed normally, as fierce as a spiky little lion. He now looked pitifully tearful. I sighed while hugging Sebastian. I couldn't help thinking it was time to get his exaggerated hairstyle trimmed. The smell of hair gel was really affecting the mood. But I did hit that bastard after crying for a while, Sebastian said haltingly. He belatedly realized his impulsiveness and seemed nervous. Does that make a big difference? He paused, hesitated, and looked at me, his voice low and lost. I didn't mean to. I had told Sebastian countless times before that violence wasn't the solution, even showing him many examples. Our weekend relaxation at home also included watching legal education shows together. I was relieved he at least remembered my words. What if it happened again? Would you still hit him? Sebastian didn't even think it would be best to do it before the police arrived. Leave him half dead. He gritted his teeth, feigning fierceness, but in reality Sebastian had held back. In the original storyline, Sebastian had left Mr. James paralyzed that day. The system had asked me what if Sebastian still followed the original storyline. Wrongdoings deserve punishment, I smiled, but I will stand by him. Of course, the main thing is I believe in my son. I was pleased Sebastian had changed the course of his own ending, but now I deliberately kept a stern face and stayed silent. Sebastian got a bit panicky. He instinctively grabbed my sleeve, stammering, so I had my reasons. His demeanor made me laugh. Violence might not solve problems, but it can provide relief. I patted his head, but after venting, you need to think of solutions. Sebastian, I'm your mom. You can always trust me. Despite what I said, Sebastian hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. I can't say. I respected his decision. The next day, rumors had spread throughout the school. The tipping point was an audio clip submitted by Victoria. In the audio, Sebastian's voice was ferociously clear. I will make sure Vivian regrets this. Crying Victoria said that day Vivian was worried that Sebastian would lose his temper out of embarrassment. I never imagined he could be so ruthless. Vivian had always been good to him, and it was clearly Sebastian who was at fault that day. It's all my fault for not standing up sooner. Would Vivian have been spared if I had? This convinced many that Sebastian was seeking revenge. What was initially indifference turned into loathing and hostility. Even though some tried to defend Sebastian, their attempts were quickly suppressed without evidence to prove Sebastian's innocence, and with Vivian still unconscious, the only person who knew the truth couldn't speak. But Sebastian remained silent. Soon after he was wrongfully accused of cheating on an exam. He had achieved the 10th rank in his class in the recent midterm exam. I understand that Sebastian might want to impress the girls, Ms. Elena said to Alexander, frowning, but that doesn't justify it. She didn't finish her sentence, but the implication was clear. Elena expected Alexander to reprimand Sebastian as usual, and then comfort Alexander herself. But this time Alexander merely looked at her quietly. Does teacher Elena have any evidence when making these claims? Elena was taken aback. She quickly masked her panic with a smile. Though it's just a speculation, Sebastian has never paid attention in class, and in such a short time. Since it's just speculation, what basis does teacher Elena have to assert that he definitely cheated? Elena couldn't maintain her embarrassed smile, especially when Alexander asked Sebastian in front of her, did you cheat? His tone was typically indifferent, but now carried a protective edge. It was the same scenario. Sebastian hesitated for a second before responding with the same answer, I did not. Good. Alexander nodded, his expression icy as he turned to Elena. It's quite inappropriate for a teacher to slander a student without any evidence. Teacher Elena, I expect you to apologize to my son in front of all the students. This was the first time Alexander publicly acknowledged Sebastian as my son. Sebastian stiffened, his face flushing red, but he held his head high. With his striking hair color, he looked like a rooster victorious in battle. I couldn't help but laugh at my own thought, then turned and left. If the kid's father is stepping up, I need to as well. It wasn't long before many of Sebastian's classmates came to the office to vouch that he hadn't cheated. Among them were several who had asked Sebastian for help or had eavesdropped on his explanations. He had a knack for scientific thinking. Even with a poor foundation, he quickly grasped concepts if he put his mind to it. Initially, some were afraid to approach him, but seeing how Sebastian, even when exasperated to the point of banging his head against the desk, never refused to help, gradually eased their fears. Despite calling them fools, Sebastian never turned anyone away. Some were close friends with Vivian. They mentioned how Vivian had spoken of Sebastian standing up for a girl. Actually, we never really believed what the class monitor said, they admitted, because after that day Vivian stopped talking to the class monitor. It was these people who continually spoke up for him during his ordeal, though they were still somewhat intimidated by Sebastian. From a distance, I saw Sebastian standing stiffly. He seemed a bit lost, his eyes reddened. Then, when no one was looking, he quietly lowered his head. That's enough, I thought. The complete reversal happened the day Vivian woke up. The first thing she did upon regaining consciousness was to report Mr. James for harassment. Originally, there was a scene where Sebastian protected Vivian, but at that time no harm had come to her. Grateful to Sebastian and feeling guilty that his attempt to protect her almost led to serious trouble, she treated him even better afterward. This in turn only fueled Sebastian's possessiveness towards her. The system said the original special plot couldn't be changed, so I had to try and alter the path leading to that story's conclusion. Fortunately, I succeeded. The truth finally came to light that day. Sebastian had intended to clear things up with Vivian. Unexpectedly, he stumbled upon Mr. James behaving indecently with Vivian. No one could have imagined that Mr. James, who appeared gentle and cultured teaching and nurturing at school, was secretly harboring sinister intentions towards his own stepdaughter. Sebastian wanted to take Vivian away, but was stopped by Mr. James. In the scuffle, Vivian fell down the stairs. In a panic, Sebastian called an ambulance, not anticipating that Mr. James would preemptively call the police and falsely accuse him. With Vivian's testimony, Mr. James was arrested. He had been confident that Vivian would not dare to speak out about the incident. At the time of his arrest, Mr. James was in the process of targeting Victoria due to a previous loss of face caused by Sebastian. Combined with Vivian's deliberate distancing, Victoria harbored resentment against Sebastian and colluded with Mr. James. But she didn't anticipate that her actions would ultimately harm herself. When she was rescued, Victoria was on the verge of a breakdown, yet no one sympathized with her. Ms. Elena, who had previously falsely accused Sebastian of cheating on a test but refused to apologize, was also disciplined by the Education Bureau. Later, she was reported for trying to seduce a student's parent and for spreading inappropriate comments. Among the student community, Elena could no longer remain at the school. She got what she deserved. On the day the disciplinary document was issued, I took a copy of a letter to find Sebastian. Recently, wherever he went, he received looks of guilt mixed with admiration. Annoyed, Sebastian decided to find a quiet place to be alone. When I found him, he was watching people play basketball. Vivian asked me to say sorry to you. I sat down next to him, turned to look at him, and asked, "So why did she fall down the stairs that day?" Sebastian turned his head to look at the basketball court. Just when I thought he wouldn't answer, Sebastian spoke softly. "That day she actually wanted to die along with Mr. James." I was stunned by his response, not expecting such an answer. Then I suddenly remembered that Vivian's mood seemed particularly off during that time. The glass music box was a gift from Vivian's father to her. It was damaged when Mr. James, drunk one night, broke it. I wanted to take Vivian away, but Mr. James threatened to report that I was eloping with Vivian and even boasted about extorting money from her father. I could see that Vivian was truly desperate then. But crying, she apologized to me, saying she had dragged me into this. Sebastian began to talk more openly. He said he didn't dare tell the police about this. He was worried that if he exposed these things first, Vivian wouldn't be able to handle the shock upon waking up. She's a young girl, already frightened and desperate about what happened. Now with the so-called victim blaming, if she wakes up and hears some harsh words. Sebastian ruffled his hair. He wanted to wait for Vivian to wake up and decide for herself. And what if Vivian wakes up and doesn't want to reveal these things? I asked him if Vivian chose to hide the truth, then no one would know what really happened that day. The undeserved blame would remain on Sebastian. Sebastian paused and then gave me a wry smile. I hadn't thought that far, but I'm a guy, and I can probably handle pressure better than a girl. Didn't you once say I was a hero? You know, I found being a hero quite interesting. Saying this, Sebastian's eyes sparkled. He had already prepared himself to take the blame. He also remembered how I had first called him a hero when we met. My nose suddenly tingled, and then I pinched his face hard, almost through gritted teeth. Idiot, what kind of foolish son do I have? What's the point of having parents if not to help? Don't you know my people were following you that day, and your father had already gathered evidence? All you had to do was speak up once, and we could handle the rest. How many times have I told you you have a mouth to speak? If there's a next time, I'm just afraid that if I spoke up, I might not be able to handle people insulting me. Sebastian suddenly interrupted me. He hastily bowed his head, his voice choked. I'm really not as strong as you think. Once the barrier of his grievances was broken, it poured out uncontrollably. So Sebastian decided not to break that barrier at all, keeping it tightly sealed. It was a naive, childish, and foolish thought, but it was endearing and deserved to be taken seriously. Why do you have to be so strong? I asked him, or rather, have you ever thought about why I came back to life? Sebastian was taken aback. It's because a mother saw her precious son being wronged. He's so kind and sensible. Why should he suffer so much? The tragedies forced upon him filled me with anger and pain. Nobody is born wanting to be the villain. I blinked, suppressing the sourness in my throat, and continued, so I came back to be the support my son needs. If he has to be this strong, doesn't that make me a rather useless support? Sebastian recovered his composure. He looked down, his voice muffled. What if I'm not as good as you think? What if when we first met I wasn't stopping that boy from taking unauthorized photos, but was actually just bullying someone? Sebastian's voice trembled. Then I would scold you and even say harsh things out of anger, like, how could I have such a disobedient son? I noticed Sebastian's hands clenched tightly on his knees. He was nervous, so I smiled sincerely and said, "But I will never give up on you. I'm glad you are even better than I imagined." His clenched hands gradually relaxed. Sebastian with a nasal voice said, "But you were as good as I imagined. What if once, when I was under anesthesia and didn't wake up, I dreamed you came to see me. You asked why I'm here, and I said, because I missed you." Sebastian broke into a smile. "Actually, during that time I was always causing trouble, and Grandma and Grandpa didn't like me." "No, that's wrong. Nobody liked me then. I thought you would scold me too, and tell me to go back and be a good kid, but you just told me to go back and eat well." My vision blurred. I laughed along. "So did you listen to me in your dream?" "Yes," Sebastian sniffed, trying to appear proud. "I woke up that day and ate several big bowls of rice." He paused, then said softly and shyly, "Mom, I missed you." This was the first time Sebastian called me Mom. It made me want to hug him and cry, but that would be too embarrassing, so I casually threw him the letter in my hand. "So your mom came back with a gift to see you." It was a letter taking Elena to the Education Bureau. Everyone signed it except for Victoria, including Vivian. Sebastian stared blankly at it, then stubbornly said, "I don't need their validation," but the corners of his lips curled up and his eyes sparkled. He made me laugh. "Then perhaps you need a second gift." "What?" I handed him the ongoing phone call. His expression tensed as he guessed something until a very clear "I'm sorry" came through the phone. Sebastian's hand holding the phone stiffened. He looked at me almost helplessly, opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. "Keep listening," I mouthed for him to continue. Sebastian pursed his lips, his expression extremely serious, but the next sentence didn't come through the phone. I thought about it. Maybe these words should be said in person. A familiar voice came from behind, accompanied by barely noticeable breaths. Sebastian swiftly turned around, disbelieving. Alexander, usually very reserved, looked somewhat awkward. When meeting his son's eyes, he glanced at me involuntarily, but I deliberately turned away. So Alexander sighed helplessly, his face as serious as Sebastian. The words he spoke sounded like those memorized for a company's annual summary, making Sebastian visibly disdainful. He probably knew he wasn't speaking well, so he pursed his lips. But soon a clear smile spread across his eyes. He said, "I'm proud of you, and I will always love you." The words were emotionally charged, but Sebastian, when dealing with his father, always seemed a bit clueless, so he quickly stepped out of the emotional atmosphere, and then turned to me very seriously and asked, "Mom, is sticky rice and black dog blood no longer enough to drive away the evil from him?" Alexander's face darkened instantly. My laughter was loud, but now it's quite nice, I thought to myself. On the day Sebastian graduated, Alexander, as the representative of outstanding students' parents, gave a speech on stage. Sebastian secretly recorded it, and then ranted to me wildly. "Why does he still look young, but acts and speaks like an old stubborn man? If it weren't for his decent looks, I bet half the audience would have fallen asleep." "Mom, have you really not considered finding me a stepdad? Since you've been reborn, why not try someone else? The wildflowers out there smell so sweet." After this heart-to-heart, the relationship between father and son seemed to take a turn for the better. I replied, "Your dad has been hitting the gym hard lately, so I'm not tired of him yet." I remembered how Alexander, drunk, once clung to me and lamented, "I was only 2 years older than you, and now suddenly it's almost 20 years. What should I do?" After finally soothing him, he became so restless that he couldn't sleep and insisted on going to the gym, a scene that made me laugh out loud. It was then that the long-absent system reappeared. "The ending has been changed. Congratulations on completing the task." I was stunned. "Are you leaving?" "I will leave, but don't worry. As a reward, you can continue to stay here." My appearance was gradually returning to what it was before. This was probably also a reward. Suddenly I smiled. "So before you go, can we hug?" A moment of silence. Just when I thought the system had disappeared, a phantasmal figure suddenly appeared in front of me. He was looking down, seemingly afraid of my gaze, until I exclaimed, "So that's what you look like?" Afterward, I thought you'd at least look a bit more mature, but you seem just as youthful. The system stiffened, suddenly lifting its head in disbelief. "You know, mother would fail to recognize her own child." I opened my arms towards the grown-up Sebastian, or rather the one destined for destruction in the original plot, and half-jokingly scolded, "You little rascal, your mom wants to hug you." The phantom figure couldn't be touched at all, but I could genuinely feel the originally cold body of the child gradually warming. He said, "Thank you, and then I love you." He probably wasn't used to smiling, so the action of lifting his lips looked very stiff, but it was enough. I think knowing that my child in another time and space was also desperately trying to save himself, this was already very good. So I hugged him softly yet earnestly. I'm proud of you, and I will always love you.